Welcome to Brainish English Stories.
Unexpected meetings are part of the fun of traveling. Who hasn't felt happy when they suddenly meet someone from Paris, a college friend, or a neighbor far away from home? Who hasn't stayed awake all night in a small, noisy country coach, in places where trains don't exist yet, sitting next to a young woman they barely saw when she got into the carriage, in front of a white house in a small country town? And in the morning, when your head and ears feel numb from the sound of the bells and the shaking of the windows, what a nice feeling it is to see the pretty woman next to you open her eyes. She looks around, surprised. She fixes her messy hair with her thin fingers, adjusts her hat, checks if her clothes are straight, and smooths out her skirt. She looks at you with cold, curious eyes. Then, she leans back and seems more interested in looking at the countryside. Even if you try not to, you keep looking at her. You also keep thinking about her. Who is she? Where is she from? Where is she going? Without meaning to, you start imagining a little story about her. She is pretty, and she seems nice. What a lucky man someone would be to be with her. Life could be wonderful with her. Who knows? Maybe she is the woman you've always dreamed of, the one your heart wants. Even when you see her leave at the gate of a country house, it feels sweet, but also a little sad. A man is waiting there for her with 2 children and 2 maids. He hugs her and kisses her as he helps her out of the coach. Then, she bends down to kiss the children who reach up to her. They all walk away together down a path, while the maids catch the bags that the coach driver throws down to them. Goodbye. It's all over. You will never see her again. Goodbye to the young woman who sat beside you all night. You don't know her, and you haven't even spoken to her, but still you feel a little sad to see her go. Goodbye. I have many memories from my travels, some happy and some sad. Once, I was in Auvergne, walking through the lovely French mountains. These mountains are not too high, not too steep, but friendly and easy to walk through. I had climbed the Sanchi mountain and went into a small inn near a chapel called Notre Dame de Vassivière. There, I saw a strange old woman eating breakfast alone at the far table. She was at least 70 years old. She was tall, thin, and had sharp features. Her white hair was puffed around her head in an old style. She was dressed like an Englishwoman, wearing odd, uncomfortable clothes, like someone who doesn't care about fashion. She was eating an omelette and drinking water. Her face looked strange, with eyes that moved around a lot. She seemed like someone who had lived a hard life. I watched her, even though I didn't mean to, and thought, who is she? What kind of life has she had? Why is she walking alone through these mountains? She paid for her meal and stood up to leave. She pulled a small, odd shawl over her shoulders, and its 2 ends hung down her arms. She picked up a walking stick from the corner of the room. The stick was covered with names burned into it. Then she walked out, standing straight, taking long steps like a postman starting his route. A guide was waiting for her outside, and they both left together. I watched them walk down the valley, along the road lined with tall wooden crosses. She was taller than the guide and seemed to walk faster than him. 2 hours later, I was climbing up the edge of a big, deep crater where Lake Pavin sits. The lake is surrounded by trees, bushes, rocks, and flowers. The lake is so round it looks like someone drew it with a compass. The water is so clear and blue that it looks like a piece of the sky came down to fill it. The place is so beautiful that I thought it would be nice to live in a small hut on the slope above the lake. The cold, still water is very peaceful. The Englishwoman was standing there like a statue, staring at the clear water in the old volcano. She was looking hard at the water, as if she was trying to see what was deep down. People say that huge fish, which have eaten all the other fish, live there. As I walked close to her, I thought I saw 2 big tears in her eyes. But then, she walked quickly away to join her guide, who had stayed behind at an inn at the bottom of the path to the lake. I did not see her again that day. The next evening, I arrived at the castle of Murol. The old fortress was a huge tower standing on top of a hill, in the middle of a big valley where 3 valleys meet. Its brown, uneven walls reached up into the sky. The tower was round, from its wide base to the broken parts at the top. It amazed me more than any other ruin. It was so big, so majestic, and had an old, serious look. It stood there alone, tall like a mountain, like a queen who had died but was still the queen of the valleys around it. You walk up a path with trees and enter a narrow gate. Then you stop at the foot of the walls where you can see the whole countryside. Inside, there are ruined rooms, broken stairways, dark holes, dungeons, walls that are cut in half, and arched roofs that seem to stay up for no reason. There are stones everywhere, and cracks in the walls where animals come in and out. I was exploring this ruin alone. Suddenly, I saw a figure behind a piece of wall. It looked like a ghost, like the spirit of this old, broken castle. I was surprised, almost scared, but then I realized it was the old woman I had seen before. She was crying, with big tears in her eyes, and she held a handkerchief in her hand. I turned to leave, but she spoke to me, as if she felt embarrassed that I saw her crying. "Yes, sir, I am crying. That does not happen to me often. I'm sorry for disturbing you, ma'am," I said, feeling awkward and not knowing what to say. "You must be very sad." "Yes. No. I am like a lost dog," she whispered, and started crying again, covering her eyes with her handkerchief. Feeling touched by her sadness, I gently took her hand, trying to comfort her. Then, suddenly, she started telling me her story, as if she could no longer hold in her sadness. Oh, sir, if only you knew the pain I live with, such deep pain. I used to be happy. I have a house down there, a home, but I cannot go back to it anymore. I will never go back. It is too hard for me. I have a son. It is him. It is him. Children don't understand. Oh, life is so short. If I saw him now, I might not even know him. How much did I love him? How much did I love him? Even before he was born, when I felt him move inside me. And after that, how many times did I kiss and hold him? If you knew how many nights I stayed awake just to watch him sleep, and how many nights I spent thinking about him. I loved him so much. When he was 8 years old, his father sent him to boarding school. That was the end. He was no longer mine. Oh, how sad. He came to visit me every Sunday. That was all. Then he went to college in Paris. He only visited 4 times a year, and each time, I couldn't believe how much he had changed. He grew taller, and I didn't even see him grow. They took away his childhood from me, his trust, and his love, which would have stayed with me. They took away my happiness of watching him grow up and become a young man. I saw him 4 times a year. Imagine that. And every time he came, his body, his eyes, his movements, his voice, his laugh, none of it felt the same anymore. He wasn't mine anymore. Children change so fast, and it's so sad when you're not there to see them change. You don't recognize them anymore. One year, he came with soft hair on his cheeks. My son. I was shocked. Can you believe it? I was even afraid to kiss him. Was this really him? My little boy with the curly hair, my dear child who I held as a baby, who had nursed at my breast with his tiny, hungry lips. Was this tall, serious boy really him? He didn't even know how to kiss me properly anymore. He seemed to love me because he had to, not because he wanted to. He called me mother just to be polite, and he kissed me on the forehead when I wanted to hold him tight in my arms. My husband died. Then my parents, and then my 2 sisters. When death comes to a family, it feels like it hurries to take everyone, so it won't have to come back again for a long time. It leaves only 1 or 2 people to cry for the others. I was left alone. My tall son was studying to become a lawyer. I hoped I could live near him and die near him, so I went to stay with him. But he was living the life of a young man, and he made me feel like I was in his way. So I left. I shouldn't have, but it hurt too much to feel like a burden to him, me, his own mother, so I went back home. I hardly saw him again. He got married. I was so happy. At last we would be together. I would have grandchildren. But his wife was an Englishwoman, and she didn't like me. Why? Maybe she thought I loved him too much. Once again, I had to leave, and I was alone. Yes, sir. Then he moved to England to live with his wife's family. Do you understand? They have him, they have my son all to themselves. They took him from me. He writes to me once a month. At first, he would come to visit me, but now he doesn't come anymore. It has been 4 years since I last saw him. His face had wrinkles and his hair was white. Could that be true? My son, looking almost like an old man? My little rosy-cheeked child from so long ago? I will probably never see him again. So now I travel all year. I go east and west like you see all by myself. I am like a lost dog. Goodbye, sir. Please don't stay with me any longer, because it hurts me to talk about all this. I walked down the hill, and when I turned around to look back, I saw the old woman standing on a broken wall. She was looking out at the mountains, the long valley, and Lake Chambon in the distance. Her skirt and the strange little shawl around her thin shoulders were blowing in the wind, like a flag.